Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, in almost 750 episodes, we have never had anyone from the wild world and incredible and interesting industry of architecture. And today's guest has not only a powerful professional background, not only is he an entrepreneur, he's one of us, but also he has a really astute understanding of the business behind not only his industry, but also growing his own business. So we're going to learn a lot from today's guest. Let me tell you all about him. His name is John C Gresko. John is a seasoned professional with an impressive and diverse 25-year career in the field of architecture. John's journey in the industry has showcased his exceptional versatility as he has seamlessly transitioned through various pivotal roles, including project coordinator, office librarian, job captain, performance architect, construction administrator, lead designer, technical director, and AIA National Building Performance advisor. So long story short, John has been there and done that in his industry, and it's given him so many perspectives from wearing so many different hats, which, as all of us know, success isn't a linear path. So I'm so eager to see how that has shaped his entrepreneurial journey as well, because John really cares deeply about the industry. His influence transcends financial success. His empathetic nature and concern for fellow architects fuel his dedication to advocate for the industry and its professionals. Beyond being an accomplished architect himself, John stands as an ardent admirer of architects and their craft. His passion for architecture is the driving force behind his mission, which is to guide and inspire others to reach their fullest potential in this historically significant and noble field. There's so much that we're all going to learn today, not only about architecture as an industry, but importantly on our own growth journeys, our own entrepreneurial journeys. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with John C Gresko. All right, John, I am so excited that you're here today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brian. It's an honor to be here.
Heck yeah. So I so respect not only your professional career, but I love the fact that now you're really impacting so many people through your own business. There's a lot for us to dive into, but first things first, take us beyond the bio. There's a lot that we don't understand about your industry. We all reap the benefits of architecture in our daily lives, but fill in those gaps for listeners. How did you fall into all these awesome things that you do, and how did you get here?
So, the interesting thing is architecture is all around us. Everywhere we go, every time we get in our car and drive, we see buildings. And what's really interesting is that the public really has very little access to the design and the construction of the buildings that really shape our lives. So getting into architecture is typically It's typically something that you fall in love with as a kid, and you're really passionate about it. You don't get into architecture unless you really, really love, designing and creating things. However, there's a problem today, and architecture is one of the oldest professions in the world. From the very beginning of time, people had to have shelter. And unfortunately, the profession, the vocation of architecture hasn't really evolved that much. And I'm starting to see now, 25 years into my career, that in many ways, this profession is sort of under attack from not keeping up with society and really technology. So I'm here as an advocate for all architects. There's an industry organization. There's the American Institute of Architects, and it's the national association that represents all architects in this country. And it has about 100 plus thousand members. And they do surveys, and they ask architects occasionally how they're doing, and unfortunately, the results have been pretty sad lately. Architects are sort of hampered by several things. One, we're overworked and overstressed. Two, our compensation is just not where it should be. And three, there's not a lot of room for growth and development. Among some other things, like, for example, over the course of any moment in a year, 94% of architects say that they are just too stressed to even work, and they regret even becoming an architect. So as one of those people who fell in love with architecture as a kid, it pains me to see what's happening to our profession and some of the external influences that have been shaping it, I think, in a bad way for the past 20 years.
Yeah, I love that overview, John. Obviously, you're right. So many of those things we don't understand. And I love the fact that you've got these statistics to back it up and paint what is, honestly, I want to say a dismal picture, but obviously that's why companies and entrepreneurs like you exist. You change the industry, and you talk about how old and archaic the industry is, not only in timeline, but also in the way that they operate. And it's fascinating to me to get to talk to you because as an entrepreneur, a lot of our businesses, we serve our clients, we serve our customers. But for you, I know that what shapes your motivation is not only serving the architects that you're helping to coach and guide along the way, but you're also looking to reshape an industry, a huge industry. Talk to us about your motivation behind that, because it's obviously a lofty goal, but you feel strongly about it having lived in it firsthand, and you know how important it is.
Thanks. So with my intro that you read, and I do have a lot of experience in architecture. So one thing for people to know is that, what an architect does. And an architect, in the simplest terms, designs buildings, and then we create drawings and plans, and we give them to a builder, and they construct them. And then in construction, we're there to make sure that the design intent is protected and adhered to on our client's behalf. But within the field of architecture, there are probably a dozen different specialties. And so I have experience in all of those different little niches in the field. And so I've experienced sort of the pros and cons. I have a very sort of universal, holistic experience in the profession over the last 25 years. And what I hate to see is I've had friends that have left the profession, and it really bums me out because to become an architect is quite a feat. You have to usually get a bachelor's degree, 4 or 5 years, sometimes a master's degree. Then you have to intern, and then you have to get professional experience in an national intern development program. And that takes about 5 to 6 years to acquire and earn all of the different credits you need to be qualified to sit and take, I think it's 6 exams now. It's changed over the years. And those exams can take anywhere from 1 to 5 years. So you're looking at a 10-year to 12-year process to become an architect. So I don't again, I'm a fan of the profession. I love what I do. But it does make me sad to see people leave the profession over the process of becoming an architect, but also the process of producing architecture. I've always felt like a really good reality TV show would be to follow an architectural firm from beginning to end on a project.
Yeah, I like that idea, especially you're showing your California roots now, John, based in Southern California with the reality TV idea. But it's true because it gives us those insights. And one of those insights that I always think is fascinating, all the reality TV shows having anything to do with any business or industry, what I think is interesting is it's almost the dichotomy the dichotomy between the practice. Obviously, you guys are practitioners as architects, but then also the business, the profits behind it. And I know that that's part of where you're uniquely positioned, not only with all the hats you've worn in your professional career, but also in your role as a consultant, in your role as the owner of an architectural firm, is that you also have a very deep understanding of the business side of the industry. Talk about those different things, because growing up as a kid wanting to be an architect, you don't think about, how do I make projects more profitable? How do I boost those profits and the margins? I know that factors into the work that you do today. So shed some light on that for us.
Yeah, gladly. So traditionally, architects are paid really one of two ways: hourly and or lump sum. And we give someone a fixed fee. And then, it's really up to the architects to manage to that fee so they can make money. Of all of the professions out there, of all the traditional white-collar professions, architects are paid the least. Look at doctors and engineers and lawyers. They are paid more than architects. Architects always fall to the bottom of any ranking for white-collar professionals. And there's a reason for that. We have a very hard time conveying what it is we do. We take an idea. Someone goes, hey, I want to build a hospital. Great. we take ideas, we have to convey them on paper, we have to solve complex problems, we have to arrange all of the spaces, make them meet code. By the way, building code can be 14 to 15 books, not just one book. So there's a lot of complex problem solving that happens, and the problem architects have is we can't convey what we do very easily to the typical layperson, which makes doing hourly very difficult, because after you get to a certain amount of hours, your client goes, I don't know why you're spending so much time on this. I haven't seen you do anything yet. I don't see a building yet. Where's all the product of your work? So for reference, designing a hospital, which was one of my specialties, that could be a 3 or 4 year design process, especially in California. Out of California, it could be maybe 2 years, and anywhere from 4 to 8 or 9 years of construction. It's a very long process. It's a lot of money that our clients pay institutionally. So the problem is we can't convey what we do. A lot of the public doesn't know what an architect does, nor do they see the value in architects. So here's the other problem in our industry. Unfortunately, architects have done a disservice to society by designing lots of ugly buildings. And I'll be the first one to admit that there's a lot of ugly buildings out there in this world. And so savvy, sophisticated clients and developers have been on the receiving end of bad designs. And so what they do now is they over the course of the last 25 years, there's been a new field created called construction managers. And construction managers, one of their jobs is to manage the design and the construction process. And in the past, architects had the trust of the clients to design and do a good job. But because we have perpetuated an aesthetic for so long, which is a very modern contemporary aesthetic. And I love there's a lot of really good buildings out there. Don't get me wrong, but there's more bad buildings than good buildings. And that's the problem that we have in architecture. And so when you're going to drop millions of dollars on a new design or a new building as a client, someone that hires architects, you need some assurance that your architect is not going to kind of go off the rails. And so that's one thing I'd like to see architects do differently, is to return to a service-oriented mindset with their clients, and make sure that they put their client above all other interests. To go a little deeper into this, and I'll just kind of pivot for a second, in architecture school. So to become an architect, you have to go through architecture school. And it's pretty common practice in architecture school for the professors to teach young budding architects to think about all buildings as their buildings, as if you're an artist and it's your building. But the truth is when you start working in the real world, architects don't own the buildings. We are a service provider, just like a dentist, just like a lawyer. And so what's happened is we've lost the public's trust, especially those who develop buildings. And so now there's this new profession that was created called construction management, or owner's representatives. And now they've taken fee away from architects to manage architects for the client, because the architects won't do it themselves. So now we're battling against a perception that we are going to design things very expensively, that we're going to add things into the project that are not needed, and that we need to be managed. And then along the way, other traditional scope of work items have been removed from under the architect's umbrella and put into others, like general contractors, like, for example, designing to a budget. So, like, what I want to perpetuate in this industry, and there's a way to save architecture. And by the way, another external influence is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to have a significant impact on the production of architecture in the coming years. I'm using AI already, and I can kind of see and predict where it's going to go. And I think if architects want to become relevant again in society and revered again in society, like they were 100 years ago, we need to change the way we're working with our clients. We need to return to a service-oriented mindset. We need to take care of our clients. And then what I have found is that there are other ways to be compensated. for example, I have a lot of friends. A lot of my friends are general contractors, and they're much more well off than my architect friends, and it's because they know how to make money. And a lot of their money comes from incentives. And so something that I started to work out in contracts in my own private practice is incentivation and being incentivized to hit deadlines and do things for our clients. So that's returning back to the client mindset again and trying to look at a different way to get compensated for our work.
Yeah, John, there's so much that I hear inside those insights from you that I want to dive into, because what is really standing out for me is when you start talking about being client serving and focusing on that side of the equation, because gosh, there's so many stakeholders within any of these projects. What I really hear though, when you go there, is I hear entrepreneur John talking, not architect John talking, because it sounds like within the world of being a practitioner, not only is there a lack of education on what I hear is a marketing problem, where I'm just like, they haven't mastered the messaging, the positioning just yet. So of course they don't know how to communicate it to prospective clients, because what I always think about is it's a really common phrase in sales, which is sell them what they want, but give them what they need. They obviously need to understand, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is what I'm looking for, and then this is how we're going to deliver it. Where do you lie in that? Because obviously it's kind of the chicken or the egg. Who solves who first? From my perspective, obviously it's hard for the market to understand what it is that architects do. So really the impetus, the onus is on the architects to start understanding that. You're part of the solution here, John. How do we start getting that messaging and positioning correctly? Because with our entrepreneur hats on, that's what we face every day when we sell to new clients.
100%, Brian. I love what you just said, and you're spot on. It's up to the architects to convey this. How do we change the profession of architecture? I think it goes back to the national organizations like the American Institute of Architects. I'm trying to do my little part on social media. I'm coaching and I'm consulting architectural firms and individual architects one at a time. I have my own private practice where I'm knock on wood, it's been a very successful venture so far with one of my clients, and we're doing exactly that. We're taking the lead on all things design and all things construction. We're over communicating. We are giving our client no reason to regret anything. So we ask them about every decision along the way, and we record it. We do not take we don't go out any limb on our own, so that there's, we're trying to protect conflict. Because here's another thing, Brian. Construction is very conflict heavy. Let me give you a metaphor here. When Toyota designs a new model car, they're going to design it, and then they're going to prototype it. I imagine dozens and dozens of times, race the car around a track, do all kinds of tests with drivers. They're going to abuse the car on private tracks, and then when everything passes tests, then they go to manufacturing, and they basically publish it and they sell it. It's not like that in architecture. We're doing the prototype and the final product at the very same time. You don't build a house as a mock-up and then build a second house to live in. You're building it all for the very first time together with a large group of people, an architect, a client. By the way, an architect is usually not just an architect. It's usually, there's about 4 to maybe 50 people behind the scenes. It's definitely not the it's not what people think they think of the master builder, but that's long gone. It's architecture today is so driven by codes and regulations that it takes a team of people to comply with all the different standards. But so what I'm trying to get to is architecture is very conflict heavy because there's always going to be mistakes that are made. And so my goal is to try to reduce the amount of mistakes. And I don't see any other architects out there doing that. I don't see them trying to work out a template and a standard and sort of a program per se to prevent mistakes down the road in construction, because construction, when it's delayed, it costs money. It costs a lot of gray hairs. It costs a lot of stress. It's a reason why that there's a lot of architects, when they're pulled by the AIA, It's a reason why a lot of them are overworked and overburdened and just have really low morale. It's a very conflict-heavy profession. So my goal is to reverse it. I am living proof that you can have fun as an architect. My employees think so. My clients think so. We're just trying to change the whole experience to make it sort of white glove and let the architect take charge of sort of the journey. Like, get on my shoulders. Let's go for a ride. We're going to figure this out. I will guide you. I will lead you. And I'll save you money along the way. And actually, we'll make money too. So win-win.
John, I really love that perspective, and I'll tell you why. And I'm for sure biased. I'm obviously viewing all of this through my lens, but to me, what I'm really seeing that makes you so different is it's that entrepreneurial spirit. Is so much of the way you're showing up with us here today is not as an architect, the practitioner, but really as an entrepreneur, someone who's innovative, someone who's willing to do things differently. And I love the analogy of the car because, gosh, it sounds scary, but it also shows how important the role of an architect is when you say, hey, we're building the final and the prototype at the exact same time. That's super unique about your industry. Gosh, when we talk about marketing, we can throw a website out, we can split test 8 versions of it, we can make changes in minutes, but you're right, we're talking about structures here, buildings that we all see every day. So I love that perspective. Part of this, you speaking like an entrepreneur and you being so innovative, is I don't think I hear people in traditional industries like yours speak so freely and openly about AI, for example. I think that AI is kind of this elephant in the room that everyone wants to pretend it's years away, but the reality is it's here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Share some insights, because a lot of people are thinking, well, AI cannot replace a skilled worker like an architect who considers all these different things, but obviously there's elements to the role that are going to be impacted. Share some insights there.
Yeah, would love to. So what you were talking about how architects really need to take charge. That's how we're going to save our profession. That's something AI can't do. AI can't provide the customer service, and that's why I'm saying architects have to return to a service-oriented mindset. Just think like lawyers and doctors. If you go to the ER with a broken arm, it's a pretty easy thing for the doctor to take good care of your broken arm. He's doing it for you. He's not going to say, well, while we're here, we might as well fix your shoulder and fix your back. And I see that you got some hair loss, so let's give you some hair. They don't do that. That's what architects do, though. If you give an architect a problem, they're going to give you a lot of other bonuses. And I'm trying to get architects to stop thinking about themselves and start being service-oriented. That's the way to stay relevant during AI. So a lot of what architects do in design is repetitive grunt work. We draw a lot. I mean, a typical project could be, hundreds and hundreds of sheets of paper, and so those are the tasks that I think AI is going to help with. I think AI is going to be of benefit for architects. I'm looking forward to it. So another sort of statistic for you, when I was talking earlier about how architects rank against other quote unquote white collar professionals, a good year for a typical architecture firm in profit is 10%. Truth is, a lot of architectural firms in this country don't even make that. And so I see AI as a very welcome addition to the team to economize the production of a lot of very traditional grunt work that can be exported to AI. But it's the leadership of a project, it's the knowledge, it's the solicitation for feedback from your client and from your engineers and your teammates. That's the thing that an architect is needed. I don't think AI is going to replace that anytime soon. But the production of drawings and details and meeting code and keeping our buildings safe. Why do we have laws for building codes? It's to keep people safe when they're in buildings, to prevent them from falling down, collapsing in earthquakes, starting on fire, and making sure that everybody can get out fast and efficiently. And those are the things that I think AI is going to be able to help with. The truth is, we make mistakes. I've made mistakes in my career. There isn't one architect or designer who hasn't made a mistake. Like I said, prototype and final product at the same time. It happens. My goal, my entrepreneurial goal, is to help other firms prevent those mistakes, welcome AI. And also, something else I want to talk about today is the culture of architecture in a firm. I think what I can help firms do is to have fun again at work. And you start to have fun when people do what they love. They find their niche of those 12 different slots in the field of architecture. They find their niche and you support them. And because what I have found is that when people are doing their highest and best use within an office, they produce and do the best work. And when you do your best work, your clients love it. And when your clients love it, they give you more work. It's the Southwest Airlines motto. Let you take good care of your employees. In an architecture case, that means let them do what they want to do and support that so they do their very best work. And that's just the circle. It's just the circle of life.
Yeah, I like that perspective, especially because one thing that I think everyone's going to relate to, you talk about taking care of our employees, and you also talk about how overworked architects feel. And that's something that, John, every single entrepreneur can also relate to. Obviously, burnout is a real prevalent thing in entrepreneurship. It sounds like it's a real prevalent thing within the world of architecture. We talk about, and already even today in our conversation, we've talked about different ways that burnout can manifest itself. I mean, for example, undercompensation. That's one way to make anyone feel underappreciated. What are the other types of ways? Obviously, AI, I like how you say, in addition to the team, that's such a good way to articulate it. Obviously, AI easing some of those grunt work tasks, the repetitive tasks that we all have to do. What are other ways that, from your perspective, as quite frankly, I think we've seen here today, a very happy architect, what are some of your ways?
I am.
Exactly. What are some of those other ways to make sure that more architects are happy, more entrepreneurs and architects avoid that burnout?
Well, let me just say, I am very happy and I love being an architect. And this is why I'm advocating for the profession. I want everybody else to have what I have. I love being an entrepreneur. I love that I've started my company 6 months ago and it's already exceeded all of my wildest dreams in the first 6 months. And I want to share my experience with the whole profession. That's the whole point here is I have a lot to give and I want to be charitable to the profession because we need architects in society. And we're kind of being pushed to the side by a lot of our colleagues and associates and people that have to work with engineers, contractors, and owners, reps, and construction managers. But to answer your question, what are the signs of burnout? Obviously compensation. People leave the profession after 12 years of training, which I think is a real shame. And they go into other professions that they do because they just want more money. And, architects, I'm advocating for fair pay and equitable pay. I think architects need to be compensated way more for what we do. Our value in society is almost incomparable to anybody else. We provide every structure in society, and we're one of the lowest paid professionals. The other things that I'm seeing is in a typical week in an architecture firm, there's just menial tasks like timesheets and tracking every half hour to a client. And so something I've done in my practice is I've gotten rid of timesheets. I don't want my employees and my team to be worrying so much about, I gotta get this done in the next hour, or it's going to be, I have to bill 2 hours for this. And I don't want them thinking, I don't want any constraints on their problem solving abilities. I want them to think about tasks and doing the right thing for the client always. And so, timesheets is one little tiny thing, but the mentality shift has been tremendous. We find ourselves working better and harder for our clients when we don't have to track our time. I can't explain it psychologically, but it's been working really well. The other thing is flex time. Architects tend to be introverted. If you took a poll across all architects, technically I'm introverted, although it doesn't seem that way, I'm sure. But architects and creatives in general are introverted personalities. And during COVID, many of the architects really didn't want to go back into the office at the end of it. We really enjoyed our quiet time. And so another perk, so architects tend to get stressed out at work and distracted a lot, especially the introverts. So what I'm doing in my practice and what I would promote across the profession is let people work flex time. So I've given my staff no timesheets, 100% flex time, 100%. Just get your work done. And what I'm finding is that we're doing way better on all of our deliverables and all of our designs than ever before.
Yeah, John C. Again, I'm going to argue once again, this is the entrepreneur in you talking, because you're solving archaic traditional problems within the world of architecture with entrepreneurial innovations. And I absolutely love that. You are acting like an entrepreneur in the world of architecture. And clearly it's working and it's shaking things up. So I love to hear that. And gosh, am I going to love to follow your progress from here. It's such an exciting time for what you're doing. With all of that in mind, obviously, you've opened us up to so many different things that are going on within the architecture industry, within the world around us that we take for granted, all of these buildings every single day in our lives, but also as entrepreneurs in our own industries. I think you've offered insights that are valuable for us to draw those translations and create those bridges into our own industries, into our own bridges, or into our own work that we do. With that in mind, John, you the entrepreneur, I'd love to sneak some business advice from you here for listeners today. What's your best advice with all these things that you've experienced, with all the things we talked about today? What's your best advice to all the entrepreneurs out there listening to us when it comes to growing their own businesses in their own industries?
Wow. So my best advice is follow your gut. You can do it. First of all, you can do it. Anybody can do it. If you have the inkling, just do it. I think the joy that I have found in the past 6 months having my own practice and giving and finally kind of breaking. So when you work for an office, you have to abide by the office. You got to abide by your employer's protocol on everything, including social media. And there's so much freedom. I would just say to tell people, work like you're unchained. Your reputation. Here's the number. Here, let me think about this. The number one thing I have been telling people is your reputation is your reputation. So if you work for an employer and you're put into a position where you are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, between maybe a client demand and a company demand, just remember that it's your reputation that the client is going to remember. It's what you did, not what the company did. So number one thing is always protect your reputation. It is everything. And in so doing that, have a service-minded, client-first attitude. And if you take that step to be an entrepreneur, I think if you keep those two things in mind, protect your reputation and do what's right for your client at all times, you're going to be very successful.
Yeah, really good advice. And for those of you who are catching this episode on video, you can see that John is joining us. He's got some surfboards in the background. I think it's such a great visual indicator of the way that you use the word joy. And I think it is so appropriate for the way that you operate, John. I've loved seeing your thoughts, your perspectives on all of that. I know that listeners are going to be keen to follow along, just as I am, with all the awesome stuff that you're up to. So drop those links on us. Where can listeners go to follow what you're doing with your own company, as well as your own entrepreneurial journey?
Thanks, Brian. You can find me on Instagram at John C Gresko, and you can also find me on LinkedIn at John C Gresko, also on X. My website is johncgresko.com for coaching, and my private practice is GreskoArchitects.com.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. Wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode, scroll right on down. You're going to find all those links in the show notes. We make it easy as possible. In fact, John makes it very easy. John C Gresko on all the platforms. Go find him. Say thank you for appearing in today's episode. And you can also check out his business website from the show notes as well. So John, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for opening our eyes in a big way to all this stuff you shared with us here today on the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.